Hello and welcome to this week's Friday Night Live with your host, Walter Latham, and your co-host, Michelle Sweeney McCombs. Let me ask you guys a question. What better way to close out Black History Month than with our history-making guest, Mutter D. Evans? And for those who have not heard of this young lady, stay tuned. She walks a path of greatness. She is a legend in her own time. Now, before I fall all over myself, I do want to acknowledge the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson to serve on the Supreme Court.
Yes. And
that was breaking news. I do want to shout out Ms. Jackson. And I wish her all the best in the process. And I hope it's smooth. All right, to get back to our guest. Yes. Ain't that right, Michelle?
Yes.
That is something. That is something. All right, to get back on point. So who is this trailblazer that we're getting ready to introduce, that Michelle's getting ready to introduce? Why all the accolades? Why the build up? Michelle?
Yes, and thank you, Walter. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Walk Weekly Friday Night Live. Thank you to our live audience for joining us. Please follow the Walk Weekly and share this podcast by clicking the share button below. The Walk Weekly Friday Night Live is brought to you by Michelle Sweeney Hair and Skincare. Our intro and outro music is brought to you by Uncle Nephew. Joining us this week, our weekly panel member, Christopher Sweeney out of New Jersey, retired New York State sanitation worker and CEO of Johnny Roof's Smokehouse. I will put everyone's information in the chat room for our audience to follow these entrepreneurs. Today's guest, welcome. We have a radio station owner, Mutter D. Evans, born in Williamston, North Carolina. She enrolled in the Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. While there, she worked at the university's radio station, and in her junior year, she was hired as an intern for the WAAA AM radio station in Winston-Salem and graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Speech Communications and Theater Arts. Ms. Evans returned to the WAAA as its News and Public Affairs Director. In 3 years, she was promoted to Executive Vice President and General Manager with an option to buy the station. In 1979, Ms. Evans purchased WAAA from Media Broadcasting Corporation for $1.04 million, making her the youngest and second African-American woman to own a broadcast property in the United States. She also initiated the annual noon hour commemoration of the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Winston-Salem, 5 years before the first national holiday. The commemorations is one of the oldest Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. memorial events in the United States. Ms. Evans has many more accomplishments. I will provide a link to her bio in the chat room. Please, audience and our panel member and host, let's welcome Ms. Mutter Evans to the Walk Weekly. Welcome, Ms. Evans. Thank you. Outstanding.
Yeah, I am so.
Hello.
Good evening, Mutter. Good evening. Good evening. It's so nice to have you in the house. Huh? What you say?
I said, hello, homie. Homie.
No, that's classmate. Mutter and I go back. First, let me just thank you. It's been a while since I've seen you. I keep missing the class reunions, and I wanted to come, then COVID hit. So
but we're both products of
definitely
Williamston, North Carolina. That's what makes you a homie.
There you go.
To being a classmate, yes.
Yes. And we both went to E.J. Hayes, and
yes,
we go back to the first grade.
Absolutely, we do. Mm-hmm.
Miss, you remember our teacher named Miss Honeyblue, right?
Oh, very well. Knew her all my life, all of her life.
Oh yeah, Miss Honeyblue. She was nice, man. She was very nice. But anyway, let's get on with your story, because it's all about you. You are the one. I mean, you've done things that we wouldn't even imagine back in that day and time. Okay, so I just want to welcome my classmate, And I'm going to start with, when we were in elementary, middle school, high school, good old E.J. Hayes. That's the school that we went to, folks, prior to them integrating the schools. And it became Williamston High. Going back to those days, I remember you being smart. You were smart. You always had A's, Mutter. Now, tell me, how do you do that all the time? Those days, you just work hard or it just came to you?
I paid attention. I did my homework. I studied, but I was involved in other things too. So it wasn't just going through the motions. It was trying to get the best out of what was being taught, and which meant the best for me. So I worked hard, for the A's, and I'm proud of that. And did not like it if I was cheated and given a B when I'd earned an A. And so that was something that I challenged a couple of times throughout my experiences. But there were lots of us. Let me just say this: there were lots of us, and I think part of it is when you have classmates and people around you who are also motivated to do their best, then that also helps you, because it wasn't like that I was the only one doing that. We competed, amongst ourselves. And
yes.
That made us all better.
Yes, definitely. We did compete. And also, you were in the band too, right? You were in the high school band?
I was, yes. Mm-hmm. I joined the
band.
Would
you play clarinet?
Action 8 in clarinet. I joined at Action 8th grade. Mm-hmm.
You played clarinet. Oh, man. I mean, that just came. I had totally forgotten about that because I played trumpet, which
you were trumpet. I know. I can see you in the circle in the concert band. I don't remember where you fell in line when we were marching, but I knew where you were in the concert band.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was at the end. I was always at the end. I was first court. Well, it's not about me. I'm not even going to go there, but, but it was a lot of fun. And you played clarinet. I remember you. I can see you now. Mm-hmm. But, and also, remember the football games when we were in high school?
Every Friday night.
Every Friday night. That's all our little town had. That was the event of the week. All right. And who was our coach? Who was the football coach?
Coach Herman Boone, known to most people better as the coach from the movie.
That's right. The one that Denzel Washington played
the part of.
He played the part of our coach.
Alexandria, Virginia. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans.
Yes. Remember the Titans. But we had them first.
Oh,
we dominated first. Yes, we dominated first.
Had he not been a Tiger, he wouldn't have become a Titan. Okay?
That's right.
And I told him that over the years. So, we maintain contact and a lifelong friendship. So, yeah. Lots of good people from the small town of Williamston, Eastern North Carolina.
All right, Michelle, you heard that, right? Williamston.
Yes. Gotcha. Get a little tongue-tied saying that.
Yeah, Williamston.
Thank you.
But anyway, let's move along.
I'm here. Talk to me. What you want to know?
All right, this is what I want to know. When you left Williamston High, you went to Wake Forest. Was that a predominantly white school or Wake Forest University? I know it's private.
Predominantly, I'd say all white. And I was at Hayes for 11 years. I will say this because I always say this as a part of my introduction. My diploma came from Williamston High School. My education came from E.J. Hayes School, grades 1 through 11. When I went to Wake Forest in the fall of 71, there were a total of 55 Black, including the athlete. And there were actually, in my class, there were 21 of us that started together at Wake Forest. 5 female, and the balance were the guys. So prior to my class, there had only been 2 classes before with women actually staying on campus. So it was a new experience in lots of ways. And, as they say, to cut your teeth on and to make new acquaintances, but there wasn't anybody there to do and to encourage you. So you had to, you had to do it all for yourself. And that's what I did. And I played band. I was in the marching band my freshman year.
Oh, okay.
And I gave that up. I didn't have time to maintain that. Actually, because as I assessed my talents and gifts and interests when I was in high school, that became a natural draw. Actually, I tell people, and I have to qualify it because young folks don't know, actually my goal was to become the female Walter Cronkite. I had the opportunity to do television, and I turned it down after I did an internship and was guaranteed a job once I graduated. Actually, I worked some part-time that fall in my senior year, but I was not. I was naive to what an invasion of privacy being a recognized space would be. And so, though I had the chance to do TV, I turned it down and opted to do radio, thinking, well, I can move about, be myself, I can go shopping, go to the movie, go for a walk, and people won't know me. They don't hear my voice, they don't know my name, so I can still have some sense of privacy. And that became a very conscious thing as I did. Wake Forest had what was called a 414. So mid-January to mid-February, going in my senior year, I did took a TV practicum course and I actually worked for three different television stations. And I did some on-camera work. And I was amazed by kids on campus that I'd run into going to the cafeteria, walking to the post office. Someone would say, "Didn't I see you on TV last night?" And that blew me away. Because I'm going, who would know me in Winston-Salem? And that really was the turning point. I then realized that I could not do TV and maintain my anonymity, and that was important to me. So my hats are off to people over the years, who do that. But I also I appreciate their need to keep their personal life to the extent possible separate from their professional life. And I recognized very early on that wasn't going to happen. And so that's the reason why I continued with the radio, though I did have a chance to do television, which was what my initial goal was.
And there were very few on television, doing television at that time, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the reason why I said I wanted to be the female Walter Cronkite. Barbara Walters was doing TV news, but she wasn't doing it nationally. Nobody knew her. All of those, even white females, came later. And there weren't blacks doing it. So that's the reason for the goal. The ultimate goal was to be the female Walter Cronkite, who was the best at what he did during that decade.
Okay. Before I switch over, did you initially start out as an intern at these broadcast places?
Actually, on campus, I started working with WFDD my freshman year. When I went to visit the school, I asked for not to just be interviewed, but as the director of the campus radio station, who would have me come back year after year to speak to his classes, his students. He said, we didn't just interview her, she interviewed us. And I asked, how do I get involved with your radio station? Because that was a natural to do the radio. And then the television courses were really more like your junior, senior year. And I found out that the only way that I could do that no students worked at the radio station without having done what was called radio practicum first. And I took it as a first semester freshman, which was unheard of. And my freshman advisor said he wouldn't approve it. And I said, why not? He says, because you can't take courses in your major as a freshman. And I looked at him and I said, and why not? He said, well, that's just the way it is. I said, and I don't even remember what his name was now. He said, you can't take that to your junior year. And I said, with all due respect, sir, you're not going to waste 2 years of my life when I know what I want to do. Who can overrule this? And it was the chairman of the department. And I found him. I made my case. He approved it. So as a first semester freshman, I took radio practicum. And the second semester, I was doing work on the radio, a show, classical music. I did news reporting. I produced a program called Focusing on the Arts. And I continued that throughout my tenure at Wake Forest before doing things off of campus.
Well, I mean, you got to stand up. That's the good. That is great. But this radio, the practicum, that was, like you said, your junior year, you couldn't take it, but that was a requirement under your major, under the mass communications major, right?
Yes, but I took it as a first semester freshman.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't accept no.
You're always breaking barriers.
No because, well, I knew what I wanted to do. So, one of the things, Walter, that I always say to people and to young people and adults too, you have to know when you warrant being the exception. Other people don't know you. They don't know. And so I was never afraid to ask and I continue to do that. And if I do that and the answer is no, then at some point, you have to accept that. But I don't accept, because that's the way it is to everybody else, because everybody else isn't me and I'm not everybody else. And I knew that as a child. So that's how it all really got started. And that's also the reason why it happened so quickly, because I did not do things on the timetable that most people did things on the timetable back then.
Can you link that back to how we were schooled at E.J. Hayes? Because I remember that I had total confidence when I came to New York. There was no inferiority complex whatsoever. And I was just totally confident, which I remain today. But would you trace that back to how we were schooled?
Sure. I mean, it was a combination of my home life, my parents. It was fellow students, but it was also the quality of teachers, the leadership that we had at the school. When we were at school, that was before desegregation.
Right.
So it was mixed. It never became integrated. That's just the terminology that was used. And
right.
And as I tell people, the desegregation wasn't because necessarily that blacks wanted to go to school with whites. It didn't really matter about that. What we wanted was to have the first edition books, to have equipment in chemistry and biology labs, which we did not have. So that was what was important as we were growing up. So, but in spite of that, we had dedicated teachers who went out of their way to make the most of the circumstances. And so, yes, all of that goes back to being young. Things aren't easy; they're not given to you on a silver platter. But you make the most out of it. And in order to do that, you have to think outside of the box.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the kids today, that's why it's so important that we have people like yourself, to show people that it's not easy. It's hard work, but you have to have confidence. All right. There's a few quotes that I want to, that I downloaded of yours that I want to get to in a little later in the show. But, going back to WAAA, all right. Now, tell me a little bit. I know that you said that you worked there when you were in undergrad, and then postgraduate. After you graduated, you started working there full time. All right. Can you tell us a little bit how that manifested itself?
Yes, going into my senior year, that summer, I had actually explored job opportunities at home and in Eastern North Carolina, and could not find anything. And so I actually stayed in Winston uh, the summer of '74 as I completed my junior year, and with the hopes that perhaps I would be able to do some radio work. But I'd gotten a job actually working for the city, and but I continued to do, to seek, and the
Right.
opportunity opened up. So I left a better paying job with fewer hours to go to work at the WAAA in the news department. And I worked 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, and half days on Saturday. Um, but that was about getting the experience, um, and so that's what led to it. But because I also did a good job, the owner and general manager of the station at the time asked me if I would be willing to continue working part time that fall, which I did do. And I did it up to Christmas because I did Christmas break, came home, but it was my senior year in which Wake Forest offered what was called a winter term, or 414, which meant that for a month or 4 weeks that you could. Some kids didn't even come back to school. They took the 4 weeks off. Others did independent study projects, and others did other work. I took a television practicum course, which allowed me to work um, what was really the ABC affiliate, and I worked with the ABC affiliate in the Greensboro, Winston-Salem High Point market. But I covered 3 beats. I worked with the primary reporter for Winston-Salem, worked for one in Greensboro, and one in High Point, and they were 3 white males, and that was how I kind of cut my teeth. But I did writing,
Okay.
I stayed, I did editing, so it was that exposure that let me know that I could do TV, and was actually offered a job when I completed that to come back to work full time once I graduated. But because of the feedback I got from doing that for a week, that's when I opted to stay in radio. And the station WAA, which is where I had worked that summer, and part time through the fall, was I just went back, was going to be leaving, graduating, just stopped by the station to say hello to the folks that I met. And the owner of the station then says, "The Mutter, what are you doing? I understand you're going to work for a television station. You've been doing that." And I said, "Yes, I had the opportunity to do so, but I turned it down because they wanted me to continue working my that second semester, which was almost full time, and that was also commuting, and I had a full course load." So
Right.
the general manager had offered it to me, once I graduated, and I said, "But I did not take it then, so that's no longer in the place." And so at that point, conversation changed. He says, "Well, I've got an opening here in the news department. Would you like to come back to work here?" And that's how that happened. So I never missed a beat. I graduated, already had a job in 2 weeks. Graduated May 16th, June 1, I began work. And as they say, and I haven't stopped.
Yeah, within 3 years, you got to the executive level, right?
Yes. Well, yes. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
see
was
that
part
you
of
were.
it. Yeah, I did everything. I did I learned the business, which is what I tell people, young folks all the time. Don't be hung up about what you get paid to do. Knowledge is invaluable. Experience is invaluable. And if you show yourself worthy, opportunities will open up, and they will open up quicker. And that's what I did. So I did news. I did uh, I did some production work, some voice work. I knew how to do it, but I wasn't interested in being the quote, the disc jockey personality, but I knew how to cue a record. I knew how to edit. So it was a full experience that allowed me to, when I was promoted to executive VP and general manager, it happened a lot quicker. It happened quicker than I expected. That was not my plan, but there again, opportunity knocked and I seized it.
Okay. Would you consider the owner a mentor? Was he something like a mentor to you?
He was a white male, very, very smart. Had stations in the Spartanburg, South Carolina, in Florida. His mother had been an owner. So, yes, he was a mentor from the standpoint that he was experienced, though he was one of a kind. He did not fit the bill of most other people who were owners, but he challenged people, and that was all of us. So if you listen, you learn. You had the opportunity to, because it was an AM station, so small station. From that standpoint, you know, you didn't have the big staffs, but probably our staff then was bigger than some of the stations now, because as everybody has cut back with things, you don't have everything being live. So yes, he was a mentor, and from that I went into doing sales and marketing. When I was in school, that was not a part of the major. I wanted to take that, but I could not fit that in my major because the classes would always be filled up before I could sign up for that. So that experience came from on-the-job training.
Before I turn it over to Chris and Michelle, I just got one question for you too. It jumps out at me on the page. All right, you had right of first refusal, all right, when they decided to sell. All right, and you paid $1.04 million. This is 1979. You were 26 years old. Where'd you get the $1 million?
How does people get anything? You go in debt. I didn't have it. I went in debt.
Yeah, you funded it, man. That's awesome. Yeah, back then.
I went in debt. It was also creative. My initial part of it, I certainly could not have done it without the support of my parents believing in me and backing me up. But my initial loan was actually done by a Black-owned bank, Greensboro National Bank. And that was the first stage. And then the second stage was, a general market bank that was also backed by a SBA guarantee. So it was also about doing the homework and knowing what was available and making it fit. But that's how you do it. No, I didn't have the money, and even when it was offered, I said to him, "You offered me this. You don't have any money. I've only worked for you, and you know what you pay me, so there ain't no way."
Yeah. I mean,
we laughed about that for a long, long time.
Yeah, to be 26 years old when you made that purchase, you were the youngest and the second African American woman in the U.S. to own a broadcast property. That's like a Byron Nelson type thing. That's how I quit it.
And I will say this: I was second, but I was second only by 2 days later, and that was really about when the FCC approved the application.
That's paperwork.
It was Dorothy Brunson, whom I had met in '78 when I attended Minority Broadcasting Conference at the White House under the leadership of Jimmy Carter. I was on a panel with Dorothy Brunson and Mrs. Bell out of Detroit. She and her husband owned a station up in Detroit, and it was the three of us. And at that point, Mrs. Bell owned a property, she and her husband. Dorothy did not own a station, nor did I. But later in years, as she would say, the difference between she and me, she says, as we both served on, we're speaking at a conference, she says, I'm old enough to be Mutter's mother. You know, she did stuff at an age, and so hats off to her. But and I'm sure the nod was she worked for Sunderland Broadcasting, and I'm sure in New York you're familiar with them, or if you go back and look at them in terms of New York. So that name was there. So her application was approved first, but mine was also. Both applications were approved the same week by the FCC. Now, the other way that you look at it in terms of who closed first, I never bothered to look to see when she actually closed out. I closed the next week because everything was in place. So, that becomes a technicality, but I'm not hung up about that because that wasn't what I started out to do. I did not know I was making history. It was just an opportunity that was presented and I seized it. And I think somewhere else in terms of an article, someone asked us, weren't you afraid? I said, no, I wasn't afraid to fail because I was young enough that even if I failed, I knew I was going to learn from it. And so, I never got hung up on what somebody else's description of me would be. You're a failure. Okay. You're not a failure because somebody else said you failed. You're a failure because you keep trying. And nobody who's ever succeeded did not fail at something numerous of times before they hit it big. And that's where it's important that you read, that you understand history. And so it was an opportunity that knocked. And as the owner said to me with it, I actually tried to get him to wait. Give me another year or two. And I can see him now with his legs crossed, and he laughed. He says, Mutter doesn't work that way. He says, you have to seize opportunities when they do not. And I thought about it, and I accepted the challenge and then began to go about the business of how do I make this happen?
Okay. Chris?
Hey, good evening.
Hi, Chris.
So, how you doing?
I'm good.
First of all, I'm well. I'm great. I want to say this is a wonderful introduction into Women's History Month. It's just fantastic. It's fascinating hearing the stories that you're telling.
Thank you.
And I want to ask, first of all, that Williamston, North Carolina, there's a lot of gems there. Walt, of course. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of great people coming out of Williamston, North Carolina.
Absolutely, yeah.
What is it about radio, that medium, that drew you to do that? Because it sounds like at a very early age, you knew that's what you wanted to do.
Well, I assessed my strength. I had good communication skills, verbally. I enjoyed writing, and even in high school, I was writing things for the local paper and in terms of doing different reports. I enjoyed interacting with people. So when I assessed my strengths, that became a natural for me. And that's really how it happened. Because, throughout my life, I considered being a whole lot of things. But by the time I got to high school, it was just about what are you good at that you can become better at and that you won't mind doing. One of my other things is that I share with young people, and I can't help but in terms of doing this, because I realized it early on that no matter who you are or what the job is, there are going to be days when you don't want to get up and go to work. So it's important that you pick something that you do enjoy doing, because that's how you push yourself to go on when you don't want to go. Because otherwise, you end up hating it and you're miserable. And communications, radio, TV was something that I could see myself doing. And I've always been interested in terms of seeking knowledge, that natural curiosity, love music, the history, all of it. It was just a natural fit.
Excellent. And one more thing. I know it had to be tough back then, hanging in there.
Oh yes. No, make no mistake about it. I've got my battle scars. Yes.
Yes. How have you transitioned with technology over the years in this medium. Of course, everybody, the lure is for television and all of this stuff. And now that we have these smartphones and all this technology and these apps, it's easy to get lost. How did you manage to transition and stay relevant and stay ahead of the curve?
Well, I won't say that we actually necessarily always stayed ahead of, but we kept up enough. We weren't that far behind in terms of the technology, in terms of radio. And Chris, I was smart enough that I hired people who knew and had experiences that I didn't have. So though I worked it, I was general manager, but it was never all about me. I surrounded myself, my first staff of about 30-some people, they were, for the most part, they were contemporaries. They too had a desire to learn, but we worked hard and we enjoyed each other's company, and we did things together, and we were involved in the community. So when technology also changed, and I had an engineer who stayed on top of that. How do you do this? And how did you move this up? And how do you do this? And it's still cost effective from the standpoint of equipment, because radio broadcast equipment was very, very expensive. So it was about knowing quality. It wasn't necessarily about always getting something that was brand new, just like with anything else. When they say about cars, it's new to me. It may not be fresh out of the block, but it's new to me. So, but you don't just up and purchase something because it's there. So, I had someone who was good and dedicated and to do that, and had other people who worked part-time. So we all had that in common, the love of the business. We didn't just play music. We did news. We had public affairs programming. We started a talk show. My news director and the program director came to me and says, "Hey, we want to do a talk show, but our talk show was different because it wasn't just about fun and games and laughing. It dealt with serious topics." So we, in fact, did become the voice of the community, where we dealt with not only local issues, but national issues, sometimes from a local perspective. And so we did it all. We entertained, we inspired, and we informed. And that kept us relevant. We played the best R&B music, oldies, but we also played gospel. We played jazz, that combination. People say, "Oh, you can," but we made it work because nobody else was doing all of that. And so that expanded our audience base as well, even though we were an AM station.
Well, I really applaud you, salute you, and it's very important for us to have people like you around who you've been around a long time, you know the business, and it's important in this time that we live in now where truth is not at the forefront of everything. And when you could have a medium like radio, you could stay more true to what your roots are and where you come from, and not kind of sell out because you got a little bit more control in radio, where at least in my opinion. And it's very important to have people like you. More people need to know who you are, what you've done, and what you're continuing to do. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate that.
Amen. That's great. So, Ms. Evans, I have a question. During the years that you've had and owned your radio station, quite some time, you didn't sell it until the 2000s.
Yeah, 2007.
Besides being a second Black female to own a radio station, what were some of your biggest highlights during your broadcasting career?
Well,
or your most special or treasured ones that will always stay with you.
You're making me kind of way go back there. The memory there, Michelle. as I said, first and foremost, it was about being able to recognize talent and gift in the staff that I hired.
Mm-hmm.
From that standpoint, we were contemporaries because without having a good staff and people who were willing to work together, we couldn't have accomplished the things that we did do. We did interviews. For example, I got to meet Dr. Maya Angelou when I was a student in college. We maintained a friendship to the day that she died, before she moved back to Winston-Salem. And so, we did interviews with her, telephone interviews. We had a good relationship with the record promotions industry. So
Yes.
when groups were in the area making tours, even though we were an AM station, they stopped by AAA radio. There were others that they bypassed, but they came to AAA because they knew what we meant to the marketplace. We in the community, elected officials, ministers, you name it. We had them on as guests at the station. So it was all of that. It was a combination. We were 360 degrees in the service that we provided. I guess, when I think back in terms of highlights, I was the first business that they had black faces on billboards in the marketplace to promote my people. The first blood bank, blood draw that was ever done, we hosted it in the black community. There'd never been one in the black community before. We did fun things that could also be family events, because even though we were adult in terms of our music, what I said to my music director and program director, and we didn't always agree, but I had to make them understand that mamas and daddies who are listening to us on their way to work have their kids riding in the car with them. So no, we're not playing the garbage. I don't care how strong it is. We're not playing the stuff with bad language, because responsible parents are going to tune away because they don't want their kids hearing that. So even though it's for the adults, it also has to be something that will be that. So young people listen to us. One of my best friends, I can see her daughters now who are in their early 50s, and I remember a conversation once, and they said to me, Mutter, ooh, AAA was jamming. Ooh, you were sounding so good until 3 o'clock, and y'all started playing all that old folks music, because on Saturday afternoons for 4 hours, we do just solid oldies. So it was not any one thing, Michelle. It was all of that. I was able to bring Tony Brown, if you remember Tony Brown's
Yes.
journal,
Yes.
for an anniversary, and he was a guest speaker for me for the 40th anniversary. You all know, being there in New York, the legendary Percy Sutton, whom I got to meet, and he came to speak. So, before Les Brown was the Les that everybody knows, I met Les because he was in the marketplace. As a matter of fact, I called him last week to wish him a happy birthday, happy 77. And he knew who I was. I said, "You still have my number in your phone?" He says, "Yes." And so we did it, catching up. So in everything, it really is about relationship. And if you, if you treat people like you want to be treated and try and provide that, all of that was about joy. Gerald Austin and Betty Wright were people who, when we did anniversaries, that came and performed concerts for us, and that kind of exposure. We did a thing for kids coming back to school kinds of parties with it. So it was. So it's hard to say that there was any one thing. It was all of that. And I would also say that when we were doing the talk show, if you're not familiar with Daryl Hunt, Google him. You will find his story, a young man who was falsely accused of killing a young white reporter early in the morning. And Larry Little, who happened to meet him at the Y just playing basketball, got involved. That's just not the vibe that I get in terms of his character. So he, along with others, got behind him. With AAA Radio, along with the local Black paper, we were the ones who helped tell that story. And the first time that he was found guilty, we ended up doing a 2-3 hour talk show. We gave that, and that was all so that people could vent their frustrations. You have so much going on in the street now because people don't have an outlet.
Right.
People need to be able to talk. They need to be able to express. They need to hear, and they also need to be heard. And that was also part of when I look back in terms of that wasn't about money, but it was about providing a real service to the community that I love, that I made home. But it was important because if not us, then who? Nobody else was doing that. And that set us apart. It didn't matter that they were in the marketplace. There were FM stations that had more power. They played the music, but they were white owned, and they did, they did what they did enough to get the attention, but they didn't have deep roots, and they weren't true blue. And so still, even after all of these years, the reputation is still intact in terms of what we did and how we went about doing it. So it's all of that I would say that makes me proud, makes me most proud that I was where I was supposed to be.
Yes. Appreciate that. I do have an audience question. It's kind of a double question as well from a panel member. First one is, what do you think is the most important thing missing from Black radio today? And who out there are some of the folks in radio that are actually carrying the torch?
First question, repeat that for
Sure.
me?
What do you think is the most important thing missing from Black radio today?
Okay. If you go back and look at the history of radio, if you go back and look at deregulation, when I got in the business, no owner could own more than 3 AMs and 3 FM stations. That changed and continued to change. And so, long story short, if you look at now in terms of the ownership, you've got a handful of companies that own all of the stations. They may be Black programmed, but they're not Black owned. And the same major corporate stations, they compete amongst themselves. So they got the stations playing the Black music. They got the country, whatever, how they're describing themselves now. But they're all in the same roof, paying rent one place and using the same staff. So they're competing with themselves. So they have a monopoly on the marketplace. So what's missing in Black radio is too few Black owners, too few Black managers who have the ability to make a difference. There's some who have jobs, and some of them are doing good with what they do, but it's all about their show, not about the attitude of the station. I mean, WBLS, powerhouse. Frankie's Day from number
Frankie
one
Crocker.
route, but it wasn't Frankie Crocker, but it wasn't just Frankie. It was the whole staff,
Right.
the commitment. Hal Jackson, who was there in terms of doing stuff with WLIB.
Yes.
Those folks were dedicated and could see the bigger picture. When Jesse Jackson ran in '84, he made a mark because the black stations supported him. He didn't have the money in terms of getting in there. So people say, oh, can't vote for him. He's not going to win. But you got to start somewhere. And he made a mark. Of course, Shirley Chisholm was the first one, but there were even fewer back then. And so you go and you build upon it. So, Shirley was in 72, Jesse in 84 and 88. And then finally, Barack Obama in 2008. Not only is he a black man, but he has also learned and kept up with the technology in terms of how to motivate and to communicate and to do things differently. And he took it to the people. We have to continue to grow.
Right.
Nothing is new under the sun, but you do have to put an edge on it.
Definitely. Okay.
Very true. I did want to mention that, Mutter, you were elected to the Black Radio Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you feel? You're enshrined forever.
Yeah. I was honored by that, and there's another thing with the black women that's going on now with that will be at the Library of Congress that's going to be kicking off in terms of next month. So it's one of those things you don't do stuff, or at least I didn't, with those kinds of goals in mind. But it's good to know that what you have done, that you appreciate it, and I would be remiss, Michelle, in part of your introduction, you talked about me doing the an annual program to tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes.
I'd had the station 1 year when that was done. And we played speeches by Dr. King every Sunday morning. Some would be sermons, others would be other messages. And so it was Martin Luther King speak. And so there were marches that were going on, and people would go to D.C. every year to try and get the Congress to vote to make it a holiday. Congressman John Conyers started that the same year that out of Michigan, the same year that he died. And that went on for years and years and years. And so I said to someone who I'd worked with, because I had done the station's 30th anniversary and my first anniversary as owner in October of 1980. And I just stopped by to thank the person who'd worked with me, and it was in January. And I said, by the way, what's being done for Dr. King's birthday? And he said, nothing. And he was from Winston. I said, nothing. There's too many blacks who live here for us not to be doing something. But because I had a radio station and a way to promote it, I put together the first program in 2 days, so the people know it. And the very first one, we had 100 people standing outside on January 15th, before it became a national holiday, before it became a state holiday, before it was recognized as a holiday by the city of Winston. And I certainly did not think when I did that in 1981, January of 1981, that January of 2022, 42 years later, I would still be doing that. And I say that, of course, lots of other people do King programs now. I continue to do it because people continue to come and support. And people come and support because we give them substance, across the board for adults and something for young people. And it's important to do that. And so at the 40th anniversary, my committee, they did things as, though we're doing Dr. King, we also want to honor you for having kept this up. So unbeknownst to me, the mayor presented me and made, I think on that year, whatever it was, I think the January 20th of of 2020, declared it Mutter D Day. Well, wow, that was a shock.
Wow, that's big. Yeah,
that was a surprise. But in hindsight, you don't do things for the accolades, but it's good to know that as you work, that somebody's paying attention.
Appreciate
that
it.
there are people who you don't know who appreciate what you've done and continue to support you, which is what's still my driving force, that I continue to do things, during COVID. It wasn't in, where with all the things that are going on, we still draw hundreds of people every year. I don't allow vendors. It's not about making money. And that's another thing too. Not opposed to that. But we also have to realize that at some point, some things are got to be about more than making the dollar. So if people can come and it's free, in later years, I've done some additional partnerships as I changed the venue, and of the local chapter of the AKA sororities would do soup and dessert, and have gone out of the way to invite people who are homeless, provide transportation for them to come. So not only do they hear and be edified, but they also are fed and get to leave with clothes on their back to take with them. That's feeding the full community. See, it can't always be about what they're doing. It's about what can you do to make a difference. And yours may not be as big, but if you do what you can do, and you do it consistently, there are going to be those who will be touched and will be motivated, and they will go on to do bigger and greater things. And so when I get that kind of feedback, when people tell me, I was a young girl when you got that, you were one of my heroes, one of my sheroes, and you motivated me to want to do that. Well, that's a good thing. What you all are doing with the podcast and with the magazine. You're reaching out to folks who may not have an opportunity to be heard otherwise, and that's a good thing. You can't do too much of that, and so part of that, in terms of the creativity that goes in, that's what you got to keep doing, because as opposed to say who's doing it, if not me, then who? And,
I want to jump in real quick. I got one of my friends. He's listening in. His name is Kenneth, and he said he grew up listening to your station. He's from Greensboro, so there's people out there shouting you out and remembering that. So,
well, thank
I just
you.
wanted to put that out there.
Hello, Kenneth.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, Mutter, I do want to just speak about what you do. I know that you are a adjunct professor at Winston-Salem State. Are you still active in that role, or
no? I did some adjunct work for about 10 years in the 90s, primarily the decade of the 90s, into right after over that. But I was doing that while I was also running the radio station.
Wow.
And part of that was about in terms of with young people. But anyway, you asked your question. But if your question was, am I still doing it?
Right. I did want to, yes, that was my question. Second question I have is, you got a host of awards. You got so many that I'm going to try to fit the show notes when I push out the episode on Sunday after 3 p.m. to be released to all the streaming platforms. I'm going to put as much information as possible, because we don't have the time to sit here and list all the awards that you've gotten. But two that I've noticed, you have awards from the NAACP, the United Negro College Fund, just to name a couple. How do you keep, you got to be the energy, what you call it, the ever-ready rabbit or whatever. Whatever. You just amazing. The stamina that you have.
Well, that's also Walt, the advantage with starting young. As I tell people, had I waited till I was 30, 40, I would have already worn out. But I started young, so I had the energy, and so you continue with it. And I'm still I still do, what I can. I don't do as much as I did. As I say, I have to take a break and rest. But you're also still involved because young folks, they have more energy. But as a buddy of mine says, you may be smarter, but you don't have the life experience. And it's important that we share life experiences.
Absolutely.
It's the young lady who they're saying it was Suicide Christie, who was Miss USA. She went to school at Wake Forest. I did not know her personally, but a classmate of mine, his daughter, they overlapped when she was there in law school, at Wake. And when you look at beautiful, smart woman, I can't imagine what was going on in her life when you look at what she had done that would make her shorten her life. We got to make certain that people understand that nobody is perfect, that there are growing pains, they're learning curves, and we've got to take time, and you can't let other people's opinion of you matter more than your opinion of yourself. And that's not about being boastful, but I know who I am, and it's okay. Everybody doesn't like me. I'm not everybody's favorite person, but I am consistent because I'm true to me in terms of what my motives are. And, I value friendships that are 50 plus years old, but they know who Mutter is because they've seen me, from college on through, and that makes a difference. And so you encourage one another, you support, you go through, you have life challenges, but because you get knocked down, doesn't mean you don't get back up. Muhammad Ali was the greatest, but he got knocked down. So you never stop fighting, and there's a time when you just say, hey, I may need to take a break. I need to rest. I need to rejuvenate. But so those things that you're saying, Walter, that when I had the energy to do it, and even now, I still do, but I'm not doing as much as I was because there are other people behind me who are also doing things. So part of what I do is to still work with and to encourage. I'm involved with the relationships. You support one another. And so it's not just about me growing, it's about other people growing along with me and spreading it so that other people learn to do it, no matter what the field is. And, and so with it, people recognize. So yes, I've the last several years, I've emceed the NAACP annual Freedom Fund dinner. I did that years ago, and then new people involved and says, "Hey, Mutter, will you do that?" Well, it's an organization that I believe in, so yes. How can you not say no? So if my being involved helps to attract people so that more people will come and buy the tickets to support the organization, then that's the least that I can do. This is not like that I've got, everybody doesn't have all the money to make that. If you can write the check, then write the check.
Right.
Do what you can do. So if you can't write the check, if you can't write the big check, give what you can, be it to you. Political candidates, people get out there and run for office, but then they need support. And and you continue to encourage that, to make that happen and to make it viable. That's all I know, and that's just across the board, no matter what you're doing.
You answered my one of my last questions called "We're pushing up against the clock." I was going to ask you, looking out at the landscape today, what would you tell our young folks seeking a similar career path? But you superseded that by looking at it as a life path. And you answered that. You addressed that. I don't have to answer that because you covered it. from
That's
A
the
to Z.
journalist in me. How about that?
Yeah, you covered it from A to Z. Wow, man. I have taken some notes here. But anyway, Mutter, I just want to thank you. And I do want to ask you this one last question. Will you run for any type of elected office?
Well, folks have been trying to get me to do that since the 90s. I never say never. I've helped to support others with it and encourage others. I haven't to this date because I don't think that I fit. I've seen too many people who get elected, not all, but who then become, who lose the sights in terms of the things that was important to them because their constituency says you got to do this. It's a fine line that you've got to walk there. And so I haven't, but I never say never. Up to this point, every time I've been asked, I've said no. But I'm still young, relatively speaking. So who knows?
Right.
So
we're the same age, so yeah.
That's right. So that's why I say relatively speaking, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Mutter, I appreciate this so much that you've taken the time to be on the Walk Weekly podcast. We really do. And I want to turn it over for some finals from Chris Sweeney and Michelle. And we're going to call it a day. Michelle?
Yes. Chris, you can go ahead because I'm going to close out.
I just wanted to say I'm just listening. It's fascinating hearing all this stuff, and I wish you nothing but the best, and hopefully you will run. I mean, we need some truth tellers out there. So never say never. We'll take that.
All right.
Amen.
Thank you,
Amen.
All right. I just want to thank her one more time. Thank you, Mutter.
Well, thanks for thinking about me. Thanks for inviting me. It's been fun, and perhaps we'll do it again. And much success to you with this effort, and to each of you and the other things that you're also doing. And that's also about the connective energy.
Yes,
you support one another with however you can, wherever you can. And
that's it.
That's a good thing.
That's true. That's true.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Walter. And thank you, everyone. And to our special guest, Mutter Evans, we thank you for gracing us with your presence and giving your knowledge. And you have an amazing career. We wish you all the best. And thank you for helping us end Black History Month, which is every day in our community, not just a month. That's right. And thank you for kicking off our Women's History Month as well. Edition. It was a pleasure having you on the Walk Weekly. Our panel members, Christopher Sweeney, thank you. And thank you to our live audience for joining us. Please, this show will be rebroadcast this Sunday after 3 p.m. on all streaming platforms. Please ensure to join us next week, Friday, for our Friday Night Live, as we have a lineup of incredible women for Women's History Month. Next week, Friday, guest will be Latessa Wallace, who is running for Congress in Illinois. You can follow us for weekly updates at www.thewalkweekly.com, IG and Facebook, The Walk Weekly, Twitter, Walk Weekly, Podbeam, The Walk Weekly, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Pandora, and all other streaming platforms. Thank you. God bless you, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah, God bless. Have a nice one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.